Hi, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Patty DeFondi and I am the owner of pattydefondi.com Cake School. In my cake school, I teach cake decorators how to advance their skills, how to learn new skills, and how to better the skills that they already have. And I also teach cake business owners how to get started on building their business, having a home-based business, advancing their skills, and also for brick and mortar cake businesses, how to market their business, how to get more customers, how to get the right customers. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to make the sweet pea in gum paste. Sweet pea is a very delicate, lovely little flower, and when they are bunched together, they look great as a focal flower or a focal arrangement on top of a cake, or you can make them into individual sprays. While the sweet pea is fairly easy to make, it does require drying in between each individual steps. And then at the end, we put all the steps together. Before we get started making this sweet pea in gum paste, I would love it if you could subscribe to my channel. By subscribing, it'll be placed in your library for channels that you love to watch. On my channel, I often have great tips and downloads. I have free downloads to help you with your cake journey, so don't forget to subscribe. All right, let's get to our tutorial. Okay, to get started on our sweet peas, we're going to make buds. The spray that I showed you has a bud at the top, and then there is a closed petal on it, and then there are 3 open petals on it. So I'm going to show you each step of the way. No matter how many buds that you're going to make, each flower is going to start out with a bud. So we're going to make them first, and then we're going to make inner petals and outer petals. And this is the cutter for the inner petal, and this is the cutter for the outer petals. I have the FMM sweet pea cutter set. There are several different ones on the market, so you can just adjust to whichever one you would like. Now, before we make our buds, we're going to need to make some hooked floral wires. So I have a bunch of them here because I'm making several sets. I'm actually teaching this tutorial as I'm doing one of my Etsy orders, which is a set of 6 sprays for the sweet pea. So for each flower spray, there's going to be 5 flower stems. So you will need 5 22 gauge wires. These are 22 gauge wires, and you just cut it in thirds. The 22 gauge wire is 14 inches in length average, and you just cut it in 3s, and then you will make a hook at the top of them. You can see that there's a hook here, and you just get your jewelry pliers, and what you would do, I'm just going to show you on this end. You just get the end of the jewelry pliers and you just twist it down so you make a hook. And I tend to do a few at a time, and that makes things go faster, obviously. All right, so then you need to get white gum paste, and we are going to use the size guide, and we're going to do a number 7 small. I already rolled these up, but I just want to show you. A number 7 small will be a 7, and it goes right through. See, it slides right through. Now, number 7 regular will sit on 2/3 on the top and 1/3 on the bottom. So this is a small. So you want to make a number 7 small. And when we roll it out, we're going to roll it out only to about a 3/4 of an inch. You don't want to get any larger than that because we want the bud. I'll show you one that I made. I made several of these already. So you want your bud to fit in the center. So you want it to fit, oops, upside down there. You want it to fit right in the center. You don't want it to go above. So you want to make sure it fits right in there. So then we roll out our number 7. So I typically like to make all of my my little balls first, and then I go back and roll them and make the buds that I need to make. It's just like a nice assembly line fashion. So you want to roll it into a very smooth ball, and then you can just kind of make a cone, make a small cone. And if you can see on the lines on my hand, you can place it on one end of the line and then all the way up over here. So it's about 3/4 of an inch, and you can measure it out. And you just don't want to make it any more than an inch. So 3/4 to an inch. And it really all depends on the size of your sweet pea cutter. These cutters are fairly small, so you don't want your bud to be any larger than that. Okay, and then we're going to take our hooked wire and just gently dip it into the edible glue. And then push it through the wide end. So you're almost making like a rose cone, kind of like those plastic cones that you make the center of roses for. So it's very similar to that. All right, and then we're going to just pinch it down, and we're going to twist off a little bit on the bottom, and then that helps keep it adhered to the wire. All right, so then we're going to take our pad and we're going to lay this down, and we're going to just pinch. You want to pinch the top all the way around to give it kind of like almost like a taco enclosed shape. So you have kind of a crescent shape there. And then we're going to pinch it a little bit more. The key is to get the ends very, very thin. Okay, then you lay it back down and you get your ball tool and you just thin it out a little bit more. You don't want this to be too fat where the wider part is. So you want to make sure that you get it all nice and thin. Squeeze it in just a little bit so it's nice and narrow. This is how narrow that you want it. You don't want it to be wide. And then just give this a little twist, kind of like a twirl. Okay, and then to make sure that you didn't make it too big, you get your inner petal cutter and you just hold it up against there, and you want to make sure that it fits within the petal. You don't want it to be way up here, so it just won't look right when you put them together. So you just want to make sure it's right about there, and typically that's about a 3/4 of an inch. And there you have one. All right, so you're going to make a total of 5 for this spray. So you just want to make the rest of your buds, and then we're going to let them dry overnight before we put the next layer, the inner petals on them. All right, let's move on. Okay, so while our centers, the buds, are drying, we're going to make the leaves. Now, we're going to make small leaves and a medium leaf. So I have these 2 very small cutters. They come in a set of 3. They're small, medium, and large. Or actually it's extra small, small, and medium because they're pretty tiny. And since the sweet pea is a very delicate flower, we're going to use a light moss green color for the gum paste to make the leaves. And what we're going to do is we will make them in the light green, and then we will color dust them in a little bit darker of a moss green to give them depth. And before we start it, we will also need 28 gauge wire, and since we are making 12 leaves, then you need 12 of them. And what I do is cut them in thirds, just like I did with the buds. All right, so we will set those aside. We'll set our cutters aside for a second. And you will also need a leaf veiner. And this is a pretty universal leaf veiner. So this is the one I'm using. You don't have to use the one I'm using. You can use any leaf veiner you'd like. All right, so we're going to start out. This is going to be very simple. We only need 6 small and 6 large. So we are not going to need a lot of gum paste, and it is not going to take a lot of time to make the leaves. All right, so I have my gum paste conditioned and colored. And I'm going to roll it in a little bit of a log, and I want it to roll it long enough to go through all these 5 grooves. Not this tall one. We're not going to use that tall one. We're just going to use the 5 smaller ones. So I want to make my log long enough so it's going to stretch out to all of those grooves. Almost there. So we need to get our roller. All right, so we're going to, at first, I like to put a little extra cornstarch on here just so it doesn't stick to my fingers. We are in the summertime here in Pennsylvania in the United States, so my gum paste tends to be a little bit stickier than usual. And we're going to press it in. You just want to press down. And then we're going to roll it back and forth. We're going to start with the center, and then we're going to roll up, and then we're going to come back down and roll it down. And then we're going to roll up. And you want to stretch it out. Don't want it to lift up though. And then we're going to roll down. All right, so we're going to lift this up, move our groove board away, and now we're going to cut out leaves. We may be able to get a small and a large out of each one of these, so we'll see. So I'm going to do I'm going to do a medium leaf here. Cut that out. And it's good to be able to get more than one out of a rolling, which I may be able to there. I won't be able to there, and I will be able to there. Okay, then we're going to use our small cutter, and we're going to be able to use 2 there. And you don't have to go all the way up. These are very small leaves. Okay, so that's about all we're going to get off this rolling. So our leaves don't dry out. We are going to place them into our protector. All right, so we'll have those in the protector. We're going to re-roll this. We need 1 medium and 3 small. Is get our edible glue. This is a very simple process. Okay, finished with those. And you get a little bit of edible glue on the end. And actually it's best to paint it on because then you can take off any excess. And then you get your groove here, and you want to slide that floral wire through the groove. And you want to have your fingers on both sides here so you can feel it going up. It'll kind of tickle your finger a little bit, and so it helps guide to bring it up, and you only need to go about halfway. So then you want to pinch the bottom so it adheres. Okay, then we're going to vein it, and I'm going to place it here in the veiner, and going to place the top piece on and press. And there you have a nicely veined leaf. Okay, and then we're going to place it facing down, so the veining side, the good veining side is down, and we're going to just slightly thin out the edges. And what this does is gives a more realistic looking leaf. Just want to thin out the edges. Okay, then we turn it over, and then we kind of taco it a little bit. Just bring it in a little to taco. And then we place it on our egg crate dryer. All right, so we're going to finish our leaves, and they are going to dry overnight, the same with the buds. And then once we are finished with that, then we are going to put the inner petals on the buds. Okay, so now we are going to work on the inner petals. I rolled out some white gum paste to a number 5. You don't want it too translucent. It is somewhat translucent, but you don't want it too thin because you want to be able to vein it. So we have a number 5 here, and I'm going to cut this in half and put the other half away so it stays nice and fresh. All right, so we're going to make 4 of these. And the reason why we're making 4 as opposed to 5, which are going to be 5 on the spray, is the top one is a bud. And the bud, you don't need the inner petal on it. So we're going to make 5. I'm going to be eventually making a lot more of these because I'm doing this for an Etsy order also. And I'm doing 6 sprays, so I'm going to be needing a lot more. All right, so this cutter, this is the inner petal, and this is the bottom, and this is the top. So let's cut out 4 of these. All right, so we have 1 and 2. You want to make sure that you press in all areas of this cutter or it's just not going to come out right. You won't pop out right. So we have 2. And we will put the rest of this away along with these petals, and we're going to only work 1 at a time because they're thin and they will dry out very quickly. All right, so let's get these back in here so we don't dry out. All right, now what we're going to do with this, we're going to get our board and we're going to get a medium ball tool and a smaller one. All right, so then we're going to just go around. We're going to thin the edges. Then we're going to get we're going to get a smaller ball tool, and we're just going to kind of ruffle the edges a little bit. Go around the edges and just give it a nice ruffle. Okay, now we are going to, this is the side for the veining, and I have this veining tool here. This is a great tool. You can get it on the internet. You can get it at a lot of different cake supply places. And if you don't have this, you can get a basic veiner and press into the flower. So if you're going to do the veiner into the flower, you want to do your run the ball tool over on this side as opposed to this side, because you don't want the veining to come out. So you just roll this around. Avoid the center because the center is thin and you don't want to thin it out even further because then it could rip. And you just want to roll it along to get that to get the veining in there. All right, so then we are going to add a tiny bit of edible glue here. And then we're going to take one of our centers that we made, and we're going to put a little bit of edible glue on the back of the center. And then we're going to attach. You want to make the bottom of the bud to the bottom of the center petal. And then you lift it up and you just make sure it attaches properly. So kind of attach it to the base and then make sure it attaches all the way up. Okay, and that is your inner petal. And then to dry it, you just turn it upside down and you place a hook on it, and we're going to dry it on a drying rack upside down. So all of our petals are going to dry upside down on a rack on the inner petals. So we will move that aside. So why don't you finish the rest of your inner petals and make sure that you leave a bud, because the bud is not going to have any petals on it. It's going to be the top stem on the arrangement. All right, so once we get all of our petals, the inner petals on, we're going to let them dry completely. I would say a good 4 hours, and if you have time, overnight, and then we'll start on the outer petals next. I have already rolled out my gum paste to a number 5 on the pasta machine. And if you find that your gum paste is getting dry when you are cutting them and working with them, you can get a damp paper towel and just put it over the protector. You don't want to put it directly onto the gum paste. We have the gum paste underneath the protector, and then there's just a damp paper towel over it, and that just helps maintain the moisture in the gum paste. We are going to do the outer petals in the exact same process as the inner petals. There's just one difference that we're going to make, and that is how we dry them. Now, doing the spray that we're doing today, we're just having 5 different stems on the spray. We have the very top of them. Spray is going to be a bud. Then coming down after the bud, we're going to have a closed stem, and this is just going to have one petal, one set of petals, and that's going to be the inner petal. So make sure that you save an inner petal for the top of the spray. Now, if you were doing more sprays than just the one we're doing here today, such as what I'm doing 6 because I'm working on an Etsy order as I'm teaching you, then I will reserve 6 of the inner petals, which have the bud and the inner petal, and then that's going to be the first or the second one going down in the spray. And then all the rest are going to have the outer petals. So I'm going to use this one. Now, let me set that aside a moment. Okay, so we're going to cut out our petals. And this is a nice and fairly moistened gum paste. It's not dry. And then we're going to use the outer petal of the set. And actually, this is the bottom part, and this is the top. And the same with this. It's going to be the same. Actually, that's the top. These 2 are the bottom pieces right here. All right, so we're finished with this one. So now we're going to cut out a bunch of the outer petals. Now, if you were doing just one spray, you only need 3 of these. And since I'm doing 6 sprays, I'm going to need 18 of these. And I'm not going to cut out all 18 at once because I don't want them to dry out. So I'm going to do half. I'm just going to do 9 right now. All right, so we have our 9. And we're just going to do 1 at a time. As you get more efficient, you can probably do 2 or 3 at a time. You just have to work very quickly because they are tiny and they are very thin, so they will dry out quickly. So you don't want to work with too many at once. So if you're just starting out, I would just start out with 1 at a time and work your way from there. Okay, so we're just going to do 1. And then I'm going to put these petals back in the bag, and I keep them double moist by putting them in a Ziploc bag, and then I will also put the damp cloth on the top, the damp paper towel, and then that helps keep everything moist. All right, so the first thing we're going to do after we cut it out, we're going to vein it. So we have our veiner here, and you just want to go back and forth, and you get that pattern in there. And if you don't have this tool and you have just a basic veiner, that's perfectly fine. You can use that. And then now we have the veining side here, so then we want to turn it over, and then you want to get a medium ball tool and you thin out the edges, and then you get a smaller ball tool and you add a little ruffling. You want to give it a good ruffling. Okay, then we turn it back around, and then we're going to add little bit of edible glue here, and you just want to do a little tad right there, and then we're going to get our blossom that has the bud and the first inner petals, and you can use the whole back, get some edible glue on the entire back piece. All right, and then we're going to attach, and you want to attach the same spot as the inner petals. And you bring it down, you make sure the entire thing is attached to the back here. So we're completely attached. Okay, so now what we can do, this is the only difference that you're going to have from the inner petals to the outer petals. There are two ways of drying it, and drying it differently will create different blossom stages. As you can see, we're partially open. Now, if you want a fully opened sweet pea, you get a spoon, and I'm using plastic spoons for this purpose. And you just want to, you can kind of position it down a little bit, and you lay it over the spoon. You want to get your wire so it will lay down. And then you get these outer blossoms, and you just move the petals outward. You get the outer petals, and you just give them a little lift. And then you're going to dry it open like that. And then this is going to be a partially open. The last one we did was a fully open, which we laid over the spoon. And this one's going to be a partially open. And we are going to just dry this the same way that we dried the inner petals. We're just going to turn it upside down and put it on a drying rack. So we're going to finish our outer petals, and then once we're finished that, we're going to make the calyx. Okay, so we are going to make our calyxes now, and I'm using a 6-petal cutter. It's very small, it's about 1 inch long, and I believe this was from my daisy set. It's the smallest of the daisy cutters. So there's 6 petals, and then we're going to use just a light colored moss green gum paste, and it's the same color, it's the same gum paste that we used on the leaves. All right, so let's get this rolled out. And you want to roll them pretty thin, not too thin that you can't cup them a little bit. So I'm going to show you how to cup them. And so that should be about thin enough. Okay, so you want it about that thin, right there. All right, so we're going to cut out what we need. So I'm just going to get my smallest ball tool and just kind of poke them out. And then you're going to get a small ball tool, and you're just going to give it a little cupping. Just kind of go around. And then you're going to just pinch the centers a little bit. They seem to have pointed very nicely. And then we're going to turn them over, and we're going to add a dab of edible glue in the center. And up the petals a little bit. You don't have to go all the way up. Just enough to help it grab. And then we're going to take one of our flowers. This is one of the fuller ones. It's not a fully open, but it's a full one. And you just poke it through, and you bring it up and attach. And just want to attach it the best you can. And you can just kind of dab, go upside down. And since we rolled the ball tool on the underside, it helps bring these out a little bit. All right, so this guy is ready to dry. Once they dry, then we're going to color them and get them all nice and pretty. All right, so let's get this one, and we're just going to put it in the center here. Okay, so we're going to do that with all of our petals of buds. We're going to add a calyx, and then we're going to let them dry. And then once they dry, then we are going to move on to coloring everything. Okay, now before we put everything together, we need one more thing to make, and that is the tendrils that go on the sweet pea vines. They are really cute and really easy to make. So you want to get your green floral tape, full width, and you make about a 4-inch strip. And then you want to stretch it out so you get the gumminess. And then you start twisting the one end. Make sure it's all the way twisted. And then you just And then you just go down the line and you just twist it all the way down. Make sure it's nice and tightly twisted. And you want to leave just about maybe 3/4 to an inch left. This way you can use this part to wrap it around your stem. So this is, you're going to just about, right about there. You don't need any more than that, honestly. And then you're going to get a paintbrush, a thin paintbrush. I like to do thin ones. And then you're just going to wrap this around the paintbrush, around the stem of the paintbrush. And you twist it around, twist it around. And then you just slide it off and open it up a little bit, and there you have a tendril. You can just bring it out a little bit. And then you would use this part of the tape, and you tape it around the stem. And then you have these cute little curly Q tendrils that come out. And if you see a real sweet pea flower, when it's in its natural state, you'll see these little tendrils that come out of the stem. So we're going to make them, and I would make 2 per stem. So for the purpose of this video, we're only doing 1 stem, 1 spray. So you would do 2 of these tendrils for that spray. So let's finish this up, and then we're going to move on to coloring the leaves before we put the sweet pea flowers together. All right, now that we have all of our tendrils made, we are going to color the leaves. The leaves I color ahead of time because after I color them, I add some leaf glaze onto them. And the leaf glaze will give them a kind of a satiny, shiny finish, the way leaves usually do. This is Nicholas Lodge's leaf glaze. You can purchase, there's many different brands on the market, and you can actually make your own by mixing 50-50 of confectioner's glaze with alcohol, and it's best to use a high alcohol content to help it to help thin it out and to help dry it better. All right, so for the leaves, for the purpose of this video, 1 spray, you're only going to need 2 leaves. It's a small leaf and a medium-sized leaf. I have all these, and as you know, because I am doing a project. So you just want to take the leaf and you just brush up the color. Just try to get in the veining. All you need to do is get in the veining. The sweet pea leaves are pretty light in color, and so you don't want to add too much color to them. Just enough to pull out the veining and to make it stand out. And just make sure you get the front and the back. And then you also pull in the color on the edges, and that helps give the leaf dimension. Okay, so when you are finished coloring the leaves, then you just get some leaf glaze. Going to mix it up. And then you just brush it on. You brush it on the leaves. And this will take place of steaming. You won't need to steam the leaves. This is basically seals and pulls out the color just like steaming would do. But leaves, you need a little bit more than just steaming because you want them to be a little bit on the shiny side. Now they are very shiny right now. When they are wet, they're super shiny, but they will dry in a more satiny type of finish. All right, so when you finish your leaves, the next step, we're going to put our flowers together. Now, instead of coloring the flowers individually, the petals individually, I like to put them together first for this particular spray. The sweet peas are very small flowers, and I'm actually doing 2 different colors, so I want to put them in sprays first, because then they will be, I can see which ones need to be one color and which ones need to be another color. You are more than welcome to do the coloring individually, but for the sweet pea, since it is such a small flower, I like to color them after I have them all together on a stem. All right, let's move on. Okay, as you see here, we have all the components you're going to need to put together your sweet peas. Now, we have we'll start at the bottom. We have our small leaves. We have our medium-sized leaves. We have our buds. We have the first petal. These are just slightly open buds. They have a first petal to them. These are the open buds. They have 2 layers of petals to them. And the top ones are the fully wide open buds or flowers. So I'm going to separate them into groupings so we can put them together. Now, as you know, I've been working on throughout this tutorial on an Etsy order in which I'm doing 6 sprays. For the purpose of the tutorial, you only need to do 1. So you will need to, for 1 spray, you're going to need a small leaf, a large leaf. Oh, and I forgot about the tendrils. We have the tendrils here. So for 1 spray, you need a small leaf, you need a medium-sized leaf, you need 2 tendrils, and you need 1 bud and 1 partially open. With 1 layer of petals. And then for these, you would just need a combination of 3 of them, either 2 wide open ones and a smaller and a partially open one, or whichever combination you want. So you do 1 of these, and 3 of these, a combination, whichever ones you want to do in the fully open and the partially open. All right, so I'm going to put my groupings, and then you're going to need 2 tendrils. So we're going to put the groupings together, and then I'm going to show you how to put together a spray. I have all of my components all positioned out, and each one of these sections is going to be a spray. So we're only going to do 1 spray in this video. However, I have a few more. What we're going to need to put them together is 1/4 width floral tape, green floral tape. All right, so you just want to stretch out your 1/4 width tape, and you just want to be gentle with it because it will break. It's very thin. You just want to release the gumminess. So we're going to stretch it out. And then we're going to start with this grouping right here. You want to start with the bud. And so we're going to anchor the bud here. And you just want to bring the tape around a couple of spins, and then you can push it up so it reaches the top there. And then you just want to bring it down, and I would say at least 1 inch. You want the bud to be a little bit higher than the rest of the petals. So we're going to bring it down. Let me just bring that back up. There we go. So about 1 inch. So it's a little bit higher than the rest. And then we're going to bring our first petal, and this is the open bud. So you have the bud in the center here, then you have the first layer of petals. And you want to give it a little bit of stem, and you just want to bring it down here. Okay, so then we're going to wrap that around. And then you just go a little bit further down, and you don't have to go as far for the next set. You just want the bud to stand out a little bit. Okay, so then we're going to do our first, the open bloom, and I'm just going to give it a little bit of a bend. Sometimes it's easier to just bend it with your pliers. And then this is the point where you can add a leaf in there. And so we're going to do a small leaf here. I don't want to give it too much stem, but just enough. Then I think I'm going to put the next petal over on this side so we can put another one down, so we can give this one a little room. And typically you want to go back and forth, but since this is a leaf and not a flower, I'm going to add that over here because there's more to it than the leaf. We will add the last petal, or I'm sorry, the last flower, and we'll give it a little bit of a bend. You want to add some depth. You can put some of the leaves in the back to add depth. And then we're going to add our tendrils in once we're finished. So we're going to go all the way down now. Okay, so then we're going to add our tendril. And since I have a lot of greenery on this side, I'm going to put a tendril down here. And then what you want to do is you get the tape that you left open and you just make sure you stretch it out so it's gummy. And then you wrap it around. And then I'm going to put another tendril, maybe up here further. The tendrils will flop around a little bit because they are just tape. They're not really any sugar flower. So we have one here, and I'm going to go through. You can leave them flat now because we are going to color them before they are finished. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to finish all of my flowers, my stems, and then I'm going to show you how to give them color. All right, all of our sweet peas are put together in sprays. So we have these lovely sweet pea sprays. And now the last thing we want to do is give them some color. This particular order that I'm working on now, my customer would like 3 of them to be white and the other 3 to be purple. Now, I want to just give you a little hint. Whenever I do white, whenever I'm leaving my flowers white, I never just leave them alone. What I usually do is dust them with super pearl dust, and it gives them a nice glisten, like the morning dew. It's just really beautiful. So I never leave them bare. I always add some color, even if it's super pearl, just to add a little bit of sheen to them. And then for the purple ones, I chose a lavender. And I'm not going to use straight lavender. I'm going to mix it with a little bit of cornstarch. Putting some purple out. I'm going to add about the same amount of the color in the cornstarch. Okay, so I'm going to use a flat brush and I'm going to just mix it up. And what I want is a lighter color purple. The sweet peas are very translucent colored flowers. They have a very delicate look to them, so I don't add deep colors to them. All right, so we have our purple made up. I'm going to start out with green, which I'm going to just give the calyxes a little bit of color. I'm just going to do one and then I will show you the colors. So you want to go to the back of the flower and add a little bit of color on the calyxes all the way around. You don't want them to stay the light color. Add a little bit of darker green to it and it gives it dimension. Also, bring that color up a little bit into the flower. So make it look like some of the pollen had gotten onto the flower. You don't want to use too much of it, but just a little dusting in between the calyx petals. All right, so then now what we're going to do is add color. So we're going to make this one a purple one. So we don't want to color all the way around. You want to start out with the edges first, and you just want to lightly dust the flower. You want to give it a very delicate translucent look. You want the white to show through. That's why we added cornstarch to the color. And you'll see the veining that's coming through. Beautiful veining. And we are going to steam these when we're finished. When you steam, it helps bring out these colors even more. So don't worry if your colors aren't too dark. So this one is ready to steam. So we're good to go on this one. We have one set of purple, and when you steam it, it'll kind of give it a glistening look. All right, so there you have it. You have your sweet pea sprays, and I have one set in purple and one in super pearl. You can do any colors that you wish. Just be sure that when you start coloring it, you add cornstarch in with it to lighten the color, because these sweet peas are very delicate, translucent looking flowers, and you don't want solid looking color. You want the white to show through. All right, there you have it, your beautiful sweet pea spray. And you can make several of these and clump them together and make a beautiful arrangement, and you can put it as a focal point on top of a cake. Or as I mentioned earlier, before we got started, you can use them individually and place them in different areas around your cake. And you can also group them in with other flowers and make a beautiful variety of arrangements. All right, thank you so much for watching. And again, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And if you like this video, give me a thumbs up. Bye for now.